All right, folks, how's it going? It's Logan again here for the week 9 sharing video. And this week I'm going to kind of just go over a use case scenario that I created for just kind of a possible function in our app. So kind of to just get right into it, let me bring up the code first. Here we go. So, well, actually, you know what? I think I'll bring up the site first. Kind of show off and then explain what's going on behind it. So here we go. Here's my portfolio. I go to the local data storage, which is where this example happens to live. Here's my use case. Kind of be if we would have multiple users using our app on one device, then this could be useful, although we kind of talked about it as a group and we may not actually do this. But still, it's interesting and possibly useful for anyone else out there who might be having the same idea. So you've basically got, when you get a new user, or you first load the app, you would have to enter in all this information about yourself. And so I'm just going to go with John Doe. Phone number 123. There we go. Okay, and oops, that'll work. And now you'll notice that it loaded John Doe. And did you know? You may not have noticed the neat little fade-in effect that existed there. And I forgot to clear out the fields. I thought I had done that, but there's some stuff to be worked out here. This is kind of just a very basic functionality here. But what you see is you've got a list of users now that you could log in as any one of them. In this case, what I did with these buttons is that if I wanted to edit one of these folks, so I wanted to show create, read, update, and delete functionality called CRUD functionality, which is what you normally see with databases. And so let's say John's fine, but let's say I want to update my information. So if I click on myself, it loads all of my information up here, and I want to go back to the days when I used my Hotmail account. There we go. And if I add or update user, now if I were to go back to John Doe, come back to me, you'll notice my Hotmail is there. I don't really like John Doe. Fake user, I don't want to have him on my machine, so I'm going to go ahead and just click there, and it's going to delete him. If I go back here and refresh the page and refresh my list, Mr. John Doe is gone from the list. So a few things that I did to make this work. Let me bring the code up. So starting right here, I have a prototype for an object called app user. And that app user has all of these fields: first name, last name, phone, address, license, email, insurance company, insurance phone, and policy. And it just initializes all those variables to whatever's passed to them, and that's it. So that's my prototype. I'm going to end up using that later. So here it is on add user. This is the function that both adds and edits users. So it goes out and gets all the values out of those text fields, creates a new app user, which is that object we just talked about, passing in all of these variables that it got from the text fields. Then it just sends a temporary variable to stringify the user object. And yeah, the user is this new app user. So temp is our string version of the user object. That's one point that I've noticed in some of the videos when people talk about JSON, they think it's just object notation, as in creating this new object here and declaring it in any of these ways. But what it really is a string version of object notation, and so that's how it's able to be passed back and forth so easily. And Mike Roberts just posted a video where he nailed it. So if you watch his recent video, you'll notice what I'm talking about. This was before when I wanted to just keep people from adding more users with the same name and different information. But I just ditched it because I wanted to be able to edit the users as well. So by commenting it out, it allowed me to do that. So basically it just sets the item, and I use these little prefixes here, user.firstname.lastname, and then as the value I pass the object that has been stringified. So so that way when I go into my local storage, I can look and see that all of my users, they are all prefixed with user dot, and then they've got their first name and last name. It's a convention I saw used in some of the examples out there. It can make it easy when you're trying to parse the information out of local storage and get only the information you want. And then I make list, and then here's my function make list, which is also tied to the button refresh list. And so I just let's see, talking again. So yeah, so I start out by refreshing the user list to whatever, because before it was actually creating a growing list of the same names. So I blank it out every time I refresh the list. And then I go through the values of, I loop through 0 to the length of storage, and I go, I start parsing out key. I create an array for each item it goes through, for each key it goes through, and I just split it on the period. And if the part's 0, if the first part of the array from that split equals user, that would be this right here, then it's going to bring it in and do this function. So basically I'm going through all of my local storage and looking for any entries where the first part of the entry is user and it's separated by a period. So so that way I go and get the right data. If other things have been stored in my local storage that would muck this up, which you'll see there are other entries in there, I don't want to get those. I just want all my users. So I get that item and I store it to user string, and then user is the parsed version of user string, so I'm using JSON in reverse here. So you notice I'm using a lot of different technologies that we've learned about over the week in one function here. Then HTML, I construct my HTML using these are some Bootstrap classes, so that's why they end up looking the way they do with the nice green button and the nice red button here. And then I type certain functions to them, edit user or delete user, and I pass variables in there as well so that it knows who or what to delete. And then I add the inner HTML. I add the HTML string that I built here to the inner HTML. I set the style opacity to 1. It was previously, it's defaulted to 0. And then I put a transition on it of 1 second for the opacity change. I tried doing this in the style sheets and it wasn't being applied. It seems like it has to be called directly here. That's fine. It wasn't how I thought I would be able to do it, but if this is where it needs to be done, that's great. So it worked. And then delete user just goes out and finds, it gets past the first name and it finds the key parts 1 that equals the first name and just removes it from local storage. And then it goes back and it remakes the list so that your deleted user goes away. And edit user just goes out, gets the user first name, last name, parses it, and assigns it to user, and I just use that user object here to reassign the values of all these text fields to those values. Pretty simple. So there it is, create, read, edit, and delete functionality in a web page. Now, the only other thing I'd like to show you here is if I go F12, and I love this, that you can come over here to resources, look in your local storage, and see what's here. So you can see I've got, there's other stuff in here from that page and from some other things I've done. But you'll notice I've got my 2 users, user Carissa, user Logan. All of our information is in there in a string form, and it's what makes this go around. So hope you enjoyed the presentation. Of course, if you have any questions, comment below or feel free to email me. And have a good weekend.